A pause for our local rinks, but could the NHL be close to finalizing a firmer schedule of return? Plus, David La Vaque joins us to talk about his book, Tourney Time, all in episode 49.
Hunters, fishermen, and Minnesota sports fans, new and old, locally owned and operated Soda Stick offers the widest variety of gear and garb to dress you and your fandoms. Toss it back old school with Remember the Metrodome tee, or look sharp with any of their latest McGolden Light collaboration collection. Add that Bardown Beauties promo code at checkout for free shipping on all purchases. What's going on, everybody? We're back. Lots of hockey to talk about, Alexis. I mean, actual kind of hockey stuff going on. College hockey return, Gopher hockey gets a big win over Penn State in their 100th year. They released some jerseys. We got bizarre hockey news. What do you want to start with?
Honestly, we should start with what you put at the top of the rundown, which is the weirdest, one of the weirdest stories that I've seen in a long time. And that's the story about Braden Holtby, which is hilarious.
I came across this last night, just kind of doing my random Twitter scrolls, and I was like, Holtby and turtles. And I'm like, all right, click, let's check this out. So Braden Holtby, goaltender for the Vancouver Canucks now, which I have a funny story. When I heard about this story, I was like, well, why is he going back into Canada? He's got to come to Washington, because he's held up right now at the U.S.-Canadian border waiting for the correct papers for his pet turtles. I just love it. It's so bizarre. It's so random.
The funniest part about the whole story is the quote from his wife that was like, yeah, we're just trying to get Braden and the boys home. And I thought he was talking about their kids at first. And I'm like, wait, they're talking about turtles?
No, just some two little tortoises. I love it. It's just so bizarre. I can just imagine just hanging out there with your turtles waiting for wildlife clearance back into Canada. Do the turtles have to quarantine too? Do you have to
I don't know.
Put them in another room?
What's the CDC guidelines on turtles contracting COVID? That's what we need to figure out first.
I know. It's so funny. So that's kind of our bizarre story of the week, which is a good segue into he's going to Canada, obviously in hopes of the season starting up soon.
Yeah.
Things not any clearer than they've been in the past few weeks. I mean, January 1 remains that start date that the NHL has circled, but you need to get teams into training camps, and there hasn't been any, announcement about that. I mean, I know Gary Bettman and the NHL had said 2 weeks for the teams that were a part of the playoffs and the return to play. So that includes your Minnesota Wild, and then a 3-week training camp for those teams that didn't play. But Alexis, we're halfway through November and December is right around the corner.
It feels so weird because last night, I was reading an article on it just to see if I had missed anything in the meantime of any new info that came out. And everything that I was reading was we're kind of at the same point that we were at when the season ended back in September. It just feels like there's still so many question marks. Obviously they came out, ESPN put out that, projected what the divisions would probably look like.
Oof, we're going to dive into that.
I have some opinions about that, first of all. But yeah, there's just so many questions because there's the Canadian border issue. There's CBA issues. They're now asking the players to defer more money. They already deferred 10% back when the season finished up. Now they're asking for, I think, 13%, which I know people get frustrated with those kind of things because they're making so much money. Why does it matter? But this is their income, and they're, especially now during a pandemic, with the return to play, they were asked to do a lot to make that happen. So I understand why the players might be hesitant about that. So there's money issues, there's border issues, there is still trying to figure out, I think they're kind of on board with the hybrid bubble is what they're calling it, is the front runner plan.
Because you're still in a pandemic, there are pandemic issues naturally.
Well, and Bettman keeps saying the season does not have to finish how it starts.
Right.
So they understand they likely wouldn't be able to have fans right away, but they're hoping to have, some capacity by the end of the season. I've also read that they want to do it would likely be a condensed season, but they wouldn't do any less than 45 or 48 games.
48 games, I think, was the minimum.
Yeah,
and I think they're shooting for
a normal
60.
Playoffs.
Right.
Yeah, they're shooting for 65.
Shooting for 6. Yeah, which I could see 62, but then again, you have to get going. This has to just kind of start flowing through.
Well, and you're not taking into, not you, people aren't taking into consideration.
Taking everything into consideration to get hockey back, Alexis.
That sounded so hostile, I was calling you out directly. People aren't taking into consideration the fact that there could be pauses. They might have to stop for a couple weeks, which then it's if you're trying to reach a certain amount of games, you might need more time to do that. So there's a lot of things where it's you you could set out this whole plan and it might not go as you plan, just with the way the world might be working at that point in time. Things could be better at that point. We don't know that either. Like, you just don't know how quickly they'll get through the season, what kind of issues they may have along the way. So I feel bad for the players, because a lot, I'm sure, feel in limbo. The ones who haven't played since March probably are frustrated. The ones who maybe were close to getting to the Stanley Cup want to have a chance at redemption and get right back into play. So I do feel bad for them. And there's just still so many questions.
I got a question though, real fast. Like, when is the NHL going to actually run out of money? I'm serious. Like AHL, they can't sustain this.
They're a gate-driven league too, and
everything's gate-driven. I mean, when are they going to run out of money? They just cannot pay players, and there's no sustainability.
Do you know how much it cost them to do the return to play? It was like upwards of like $80 million.
Well, because it was $7 million alone for the everyday testing, right? For just those players and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, there's that cost factor and derivative too. You have your group of 16 players that are a part of the return to play committee. They have yet to meet with the NHL. Pierre LeBrun obviously doing a great job keeping tabs on that. But that's the thing. Those groups haven't even collectively chatted about what's next for the season, right? You have guys on new teams. The teams have to get back together for the first time. I mean, they are skating in small groups. I know Tria and the X have opened their doors to groups of like 4 or 5 guys that are around, whether they live here full time or whether they're coming back into town. So I mean, that's helpful, but yeah, there needs to be a better layout. And like you mentioned, Alexis, I mean, sure, we have to be flexible, because who knows how this goes. And it's just kind of very, very interesting. You mentioned pauses. Obviously, Minnesota dealing with that right now, right? There is a 4-week pause on all youth sports, which includes hockey, and players and teams are not allowed to go. The season was just getting started. There were high hopes that you'd be able to get through the year. I know I work a couple events for Minnesota hockey, and I saw firsthand parents that weren't willing to follow the rules, parents that aren't willing to wear the mask and, stay their distance. I mean, you have to do that. Like those rules are implemented for that reason. And I remember when I was working this event, and this was back in September before the season started, we even said, do you want hockey to go this year? Then you have to listen now. Like, we need to help it. I mean, it's a tough situation. It's tough for the kids. It's tough for the families. And that extends to the NHL too. I mean, those players have to adhere to all the guidelines, all the rules. The staff has to adhere to all the rules. Like, everybody just has to kind of get in line and listen to the marching orders if you want it to go off without a hitch.
Yeah, the winter season. So the winter season for high school technically already started. Dance team had started practicing this past week from the time you guys will be listening to this. And then the day that this episode releases, Monday, if this is when you're listening to it, that's when the rest of the winter sports were supposed to start practicing. So they're supposed to start practicing this week, and then, obviously get into play not too far down the road. And it just stinks, because we got through pretty much the fall seasons. We did our first fall season with soccer, got through that, fairly well. And then we went to the volleyball and football. Those got cut just barely short by about a week or two. And then, we're not too far away from football or from hockey. And that obviously is now going to be put to a halt. So they can start their season, once the shutdown on sports is lifted. But we just don't know if that's going to last longer. We don't know what it's going to look like once it comes back. So I feel bad for these youths in high school sports. And I looked at the numbers, and as of a week from the day that this episode releases, like a week prior, there was 157 outbreaks traced to youth and high school sports, and 46 to youth hockey specifically.
Right.
So obviously those aren't, completely up to date numbers. That's about a week off, but I mean, that's roughly what you're looking at for where these outbreaks are coming from. So it's hard, because once you get to, there's a reason that the fall stuff went off, a little bit easier, because it's outdoors. Now you're getting asked to move indoors. It gets a little bit tougher. A football field is bigger than a hockey rink. I mean, a soccer field's bigger than a hockey rink. So it's easier to stay a little bit more spread out, but it stinks, because I was talking to, I work in broadcasting high school sports, and was talking to my coworkers and stuff, and just saying, like, this is a big outlet for some of these kids who've been locked up for months, and
they
most
can't
of them
go to
are
school,
doing distance learning.
Shut down too.
It's a place for them to hang out with their friends and to be active, which has been really important during all of this. So it really stinks, and hopefully once things are lifted, we can get right back into it safely. But we'll just have to wait and see.
December 18th is the circled start date for all winter and youth activities, obviously hockey included. I thought Minnesota hockey did a really nice job with their statement.
Yes.
They had kind of concluded reminding folks, like, we have plenty of time to create these lifelong memories, but right now we need to preserve this opportunity for these players, right? We have to follow the rules now. That means, unfortunately, maybe not getting together with your families in large groups. And I mean, it's hard. It's hard for everybody. And that's the thing that I love to remind people is like, it's not easy for anyone. We're all going through the struggle. It sucks. It gives you down. It's winter time too, right? I mean, hockey's kind of, for me, hockey's always the outlet. And I'm like, oh, I'm getting into a funk because I'm not at a rink and I'm not working, I'm not doing things. But just try, again, know we're all in it all together, do things that make you happy, find things around the house that you like to do. You can still go outside and play with your kids. You can still, I bet you'll see outdoor hockey rinks, obviously a little bit of a surge in that, which is always a proud Minnesota tradition. So hang in there, guys. It'll be good. I did find it interesting how very divisive this made the hockey community a little bit, because you had people on both sides of this thing, right? A lot of folks that are predominant big names in hockey saying, hey, this is wrong. We need to get hockey back. There's a petition going around. And then you have others that are like, no, you guys, like, we do need to stop. I mean, I found that very, very interesting, because the hockey community usually comes together on everything. So it's
pretty
very
mellow when it comes to that stuff.
Very, very rare that you see it. I mean, that's just how polarizing this topic is. I mean, I said hockey parents can be irrational at most times, but I mean, you see how much this even made hockey parents either go completely one way or the other. Like, yep, nope, I'll wear my mask. You had teams and players, and then you had other parents that were like, no, I'm not going to wear this and that. I'm like, okay, like, this is why this is happening.
It sucks. I mean, I understand the anger. I understand that wearing a mask sucks. I mean, no one wants to have to put it on every time you leave the house, and you don't want to, it's not fun. I get it. I am a waitress. I had to wear those out in the heat in the summer, working the patio every day. I mean, it's not a good time. I understand it. But there's also, things that need to happen to keep other people safe. And there's people that are struggling worse than us right now who can't just go to a hockey game. So we have to keep that in mind. And it really sucks. No high school sports puts me out of a job. That I'm angry too. I'm very angry. So, and also just as a hockey fan, I'm sad that I don't get to watch high school hockey for the next few weeks, and who knows how long it's going to be until that'll come back. So we understand your angers, but I wish
more time to listen to the Bardown Beauties podcast.
Yeah, there you go. Nice little plug. So hang in there, everybody. December 18th, we'll be here before you know it, and hopefully we're watching hockey in no time. So
right, exactly. We've got some fun stuff to talk about. I know we dove in deep to like what we thought the reverse retro jersey was going to be. The Wild officially released it on Monday to correlate with a Bardown Beauties episode release, so we appreciate that.
Thanks for dropping that 2 minutes after we finished recording.
But it's not any different than what we expect. I thought they played it a little safe. You have the North Stars colors. Yes. I wish there was a little bit more black pulled from the North Stars coloring. And then you've got the Bearhead logo. Not bad. I'd give it a 9.5. Alexis, you said it was like a 6, right?
9.5. I gave it a 6. Okay,
wow, that's a high ranking. Wow.
Hey, I'm trying to be nice to people. I know people are just fired up about it. It's better than the colors they have now.
See, I like the colors they have. And I hate the color yellow in general. Like, the color yellow really gets me worked up, and I'm not sure why. Like, yellow's supposed to make people happy, and it just makes me angry. Well,
this is like a weird yellowing though. Like a gold yellow is pretty, but like a yellow.
So I was like, okay, a lot of yellow, like right in the middle of the jersey. That was like my first reaction to it. And I was like, okay, it's cool. Like, it, you get like the nostalgic vibes, but it's still true to the Wild, which we've said this on the podcast before, but I saw a lot of people saying like, why didn't they do just like an N on the shoulder? It's like, they don't have the rights to the North Stars, so they can't do to the design. So they literally have to work with the North Stars colors and their own logo. They can't do that. So I saw a lot of people saying like, oh, it's kind of lame. They didn't try hard enough. It's like, well, they didn't really have an option. So
they did what they could.
They did what they could. It's cool. I like it. I would wear one. But I think there was just some others that came out that were so cool. Like the Ducks one was fantastic. The Coyotes one was fantastic. I loved the New York Rangers.
Was the worst.
Oh, it's my favorite. Yeah, like I love teams that kind of let it have fun with it. I mean, you had guys that the only team that I was okay with playing it safe was Montreal, because it's so perfect. Yeah. It's so clean. It looks so nice on that dark blue. But you have like the Islanders. I'm kind of like, what did you do there?
Boston.
Some teams really Boston. Yeah. I like Pittsburgh's. I like the
Pittsburgh is cool.
Diagonal Pittsburgh. I thought the lettering was pretty nice. And again, that's where I think the Wilds is just kind of middle of the road. Like, it was good. It wasn't bad.
I'm just going to say one thing though. Can I say real fast? I saw on Twitter and someone absolutely nailed exactly what's wrong with the Wild jersey. Subway. That is a Subway foot-long wrapper.
Somebody texted me
a
picture of that. Yeah, it's the Wild ones are cool. I'd put them in the middle of the road. There's definitely a handful that I like a lot more, but there's some that did not really do anything, and the Wild are above that one.
Right.
So, but I saw a lot of people did power rankings of the new jerseys, and the Wild actually ranked pretty high on most people's power rankings. So it seems like the hockey fans enjoyed them. So
you had kind of already said your favorite. So my favorites were the Ducks.
Yeah,
Phoenix was up there too, but I also really liked LA because I thought it took all the best parts of their former jerseys.
Yes. They have
and I thought
great classic jerseys.
Yes, like them. And then I really liked Montreal's. I was like, God, that's a sharp looking jersey. So what else did you like?
Well, I was just wanting to say the mustard yellow old school LA jerseys, prime time. Yeah. Take those 10 out of 10 times. But so I liked the New Jersey ones. I don't know. Those were I know they're like wild colors.
Because you like the wild colors.
Gross. I don't know. They were cool. And then what was there was one more that I really liked. I'm scrolling through them.
Did you see that the Gophers and Pittsburgh basically released the same jersey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and the Gophers, those are again released on Monday. Same time that the Wild released theirs for their 100th year. And I thought those are sharp. I mean, bring back those yellow breezers, man. That's sweet.
Oh God, those are so cool.
Those are so great. So I love it.
Yeah, I would say the Capitals one is the other one. The last of my favorites. Yeah, that one. I love that jersey. So yeah,
and they did a good job combining their jerseys too. And that was the thing. And that's where Dallas, I thought, failed too a little bit. It's like you could have played around with some different elements.
You know what I didn't like? The what's it called? Like the Gradient. The Gradient Vancouver jersey. Did not like that. Did not like that. It was not a good look. Yeah. Right. So some teams nailed it. Some could have tried a little bit harder. I think some just really played it safe. And it's like, you had a chance to do something cool and you really didn't. So
all in all, it was at least nice to see a buzz in the hockey world for a day about like something good and fun and like you could chirp different people about it. So good on them. Speaking of jerseys, don't forget, we're going to have a awesome Soda Stick collaboration for a Bardown Beauties jersey coming very soon. It's just in time for your holiday shopping. So little plug and promo to keep an eye out for those. I think those look just as sick. Easily to the top of my jersey closet, which as you guys all heard last week is
large.
Full. Yes. So be sure to keep an eye out for those. And speaking of designs, should we talk about Zach Parisi's design skills maybe?
Oh my God, it was so funny.
For those that missed it, the Wild had made a tweet and released a hat to go along with the reverse retro saying, hey, Zach Parisi designed it, which cool, except it's a black hat with the logo from their new reverse retro jersey. So the green and yellow bear head just slapped on it.
It's literally like the kid in art class who doesn't want to be in that class but has to take it to graduate, and they're just like, you have to do this, and they're like, fine, then I'm just gonna stick this on a blank piece of something and that's my project. What it reminded me of.
I would love to hear Zach's take on it. Zach, I'm sure you're listening. If you want to hop on Bardown Beauties and help us explain, the Wild came out and said that he designed it last season. So if that's the case, then I guess. It's
funny
it's
either
different.
way. Everyone posting blank articles of clothing and saying designed by Zach Parisi. I'm like, oh my God, you guys. It was so funny though.
It was, God bless you. Poor Zach. I'm sure he's like, God damn it. Why am I getting dragged?
I agree to do this, and then everyone roasts me about it. Great.
Well, because you have seen guys like Jason Zucker have designed a hat, right? And they put some effort into it, and they really are a part of that. And Zach, didn't quite get there. Though then again, no offense again to Zach, it's very Zach Parisi too.
It is. It's true to his brand.
Right,
it's true to his brand. I'll give him that.
So very funny, and I have to say the comments were hilarious. I feel bad for our friend Aaron who probably had to weed through all of those comments on the Twitter oh shoot. But it was, the internet wins again.
No one was mean. It was more just poking fun. It's like how you make fun of your friends. It's like, that's funny. Yeah.
You didn't design this. I love it. And then, before we take our break, we have a couple other things to talk about. The possible realignment. Greg Wyszynski of ESPN, I know we touched on it a little bit when we were talking about the NHL schedule. But for those who did not see, Craig had kind of taken what he had heard from the NHL and put his own spin. So don't panic. This is not confirmed or verified by the NHL. The NHL hasn't said this is what your conferences are going to be. But let's break it down. So the Canada division would obviously be all the Canadian teams, and that makes sense because you're on lockdown up in Canada. So we'll just keep them all up there together. Your Eastern teams are Boston, Buffalo, Carolina, New Jersey, the Islanders, the Rangers, the Flyers, and the Capitals. Makes sense. I can get with that.
Yeah. The Central and the West is where it gets weird.
Central and the West,
I have two strong opinions.
Let's pick out which teams don't belong in each of these. So Central is Chicago, Columbus, Detroit, Florida, Nashville, Pittsburgh, Tampa, and St. Louis. And then your Western teams are Anaheim, Arizona, Colorado, Dallas, LA, San Jose, Vegas, and the Minnesota Wild.
Okay.
Huh?
Can I air out my two beefs with this?
Of course.
Real quick? I've been ready since I saw this come out. Who the hell put Columbus in the Central Division and then took the Wild out? You're telling me you're bringing Torts into our division and then you're not going to put the Wild in that same division? That is just so rude. That was my first thought. My second thought was, okay, so the Wild's games are all going to be at midnight. Great. So this is like what we went through with the playoffs, which like I'm a night owl, so I kind of am excited about it. But at the same time, it's like, yo, like to do that every single game is going to be exhausting.
Right.
For a whole I mean, like just consistently playing against teams in your division who are
the time zone and the distance that they have to travel just seems so like crazy. It's like, why wouldn't you just, they're literally right in the middle. Minnesota is literally right in the middle. So why
is Pittsburgh in the Central? Why,
right.
Who did that? Like,
I mean, I get you're trying, I mean, cause you look at the Canadian teams, right? You have Vancouver going to Toronto. I mean, there are certain things there too. Like let's see where that goes. And granted, we don't know where those bubbles are, those hubs. I mean, maybe it plays out from maybe Minnesota gets a hub city and then the travel.
No, is y'all better put the Wild back in the Central Division with Torts or else we're going to have some problems because you know what? A lot of things, 2020 has taken a lot of things away from us and I'm not going to let it take that away from me too. So put the Wild back in the Central with Torts. That is my one request. I don't care what you do with the rest of the division.
I mean, I'd be curious to see if that's how it truly plays out because it's kind of, again, it just is like that travel for them seems so unfair. Like, and that's almost like that one swing that they did in February where it was like that. Like they were, I mean, the Wild always seem to get kind of hosed on their schedule.
Oh,
I'm not just
100%.
saying that as like a homer person, but it's like, last year they
really
started on the road for like 12 games and then they're back for 2 and it's just like their travel seems to always be really kind of shitty. So we'll be curious to see. Again, that's not confirmed. It's just what Wyshynski had projected or predicted. It's probably going to be pretty close because a lot of that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, where do you put Pittsburgh? Where do you put Tampa? Where do you put Minnesota? You know, what do you do? So
yeah,
interested to see. And then our debate of the week or up for debate poll, Minnesota-born female player. So as always, I'm always getting flack for these.
Topic.
The reason I did not include Chrissy Wendell, and I 100% agree, she is an icon. She is a legend in Minnesota. But I always think of her and Darwitz in the same era, and they came up out at the same kind of time. They were doing a lot of the same stuff.
And
I just put Darwitz slightly ahead. So that's the only reason, because I really wanted to try to get different generations. So that's why I chose Gigi Marvin, because she was kind of in the middle, and then Maddie Rooney is kind of your new up-and-coming superstar. So that's why I selected, not that I need to explain myself to you guys. But there's always a method behind my madness. So that's why I just wanted to try to hit different age groups and different generations there. That being said, yes, Chrissy Wendell, obviously, I love it. She's epic and again, an icon. But I think Natalie Darwitz obviously was the overall favorite, and it's hard to argue against one of our official buttes there.
Yeah, that was who I picked. And I said Chrissy Wendell, honorable mention, if I had to throw another one in there. I love Gigi Marvin as well. She is so fun to watch because we get to watch her play for the Boston Pride in the NWHL. Fantastic athlete. So I've really enjoyed watching her play in that professional league. Natalie Darwitz, obviously, that one to me, it just seemed between those three, you just look at like some of her, like, I'm just going to rattle off like some of her like accomplishments. 200
records that she still holds too.
Yeah,
by the way.
246 career collegiate points at U of M, 144 assists. She's still the leader in that. 3-time All-American, U.S. Women's National Team captain for several seasons, 3 World Championships, 2 silver and a bronze Olympic medal. Those were just a few of the things I wrote down, which I could have written down a million more things. But like, to me, you know, now she's coaching. To me, she stands out the most. Obviously, Rooney getting the gold medal is pretty impressive, and Gigi Marvin is having a fantastic professional career as well. And so, yeah, all of them you could have made arguments. I saw some people saying like you should do like an all goalie category, so like take Rooney out and put someone else in for this one. Which that's a good point. We could do that at some point. But yeah, I went with Darwitz. Wendell gets an honorable mention from me.
Heck yeah. I mean, the list to choose from was outstanding.
So
Woody
long.
Brown obviously came to mind too. And Hannah Brandt and Lee Stecklein and Danny Camarisi. And I mean, it goes on. And there are some young girls that I really want to throw in because obviously again, with my work with USA Hockey, Minnesota Hockey, I've been able to watch some of these U18 girls come up and Grace Sumwinkle and some players that are just going to really shine and take that Team USA gold medal and build upon it because they're just the talent pool here is so deep. You see that in the girls high school hockey tournament every year too. It's exciting to watch, most girls that come out of Minnesota are all successful in some element or another. So you love to see it. But yeah, stay tuned for Up for Debate poll next week. We got some good stuff cooking. So as always, if you have any suggestions or ideas for those Up for Debate polls, we'd love to hear them.
If there's anything you want to fight about on Twitter, let us know. We'll put it in a poll.
We'll stir the pot for you. We'll get it cooking and going. Absolutely. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, David La Vaque joins us to talk about his book, Tourney Time. Stay tuned.
We've given our Teespring store a fresh new look, custom designed to rep and support the Beauts. We've got hockey hoodies and tees perfect for lounging and rewatching your favorite Wild game. Grab a mask, grab a tee, and be a Beaut with our official Bardown Beauties Teespring store.
We're back. Joining us now, longtime Star Tribune sports writer and author of Tourney Time, Minnesota State High School Boys Tournament Tales, David La Vaque. David, how are you?
Everything's great, Jesse. How are you doing?
Good. We're hanging in there. Are you hanging in there? I know your kind of main beat is high school sports. What has this season been like for you from a coverage perspective?
Well, it had gotten semi-normal once football became able to happen again. But now we're recording this on a Friday morning. Tonight will be the end of the football and volleyball seasons. And then the winter sports seasons, a lot of which were supposed to start Monday, the 23rd, including hockey, if I'm not mistaken. Those are on pause. So now we're back to just gauging people's reactions to what's happening and covering meetings to get a sense of what the high school league is thinking. And I'll just a spoiler alert. So there's a return to participation task force that meets every Wednesday. And the meeting on November 11th, they talked about one of the lessons from the fall was that they probably pulled the plug on state tournaments too soon. And that they're philosophically what they should do for the winter tournaments, for the state tournaments, is leave the door open as long as possible. And if, February comes around and the numbers still aren't great and they need to shut it down, fine. Don't do it in November or December. Keep that hope alive as long as possible. And I think that's philosophically, that's a very good idea. And it's welcome. I am encouraged that they learned from the fall, because I do think that they ruled too quickly back then.
You mean don't get the hockey parents and fans all riled up that there's going to be no tourney at the X for the season too soon?
That too, exactly.
Well, don't you think that, by keeping that hope that, maybe there will be a state tournament, do you think that'll affect the way that the athletes play, knowing that there's maybe something more to play for? I cover high school sports on the broadcasting side of things, and something I noticed a lot this season was that the players were just so happy to be there. Win or lose, I saw so many smiles on their faces. It was just like they were just so happy to be playing the sport, which I think because they probably didn't even know if they were going to have a season at all, especially for some of the older kids who this is going to be it for them. Do you think that having that potential postseason idea is going to make the players play any different?
I don't know that it'll make them play any different. I'm curious who it keeps around. Versus who might leave. Although those that are leaving, I'm wondering where you're going, because this is a wide situation. This isn't, the grass isn't necessarily greener anywhere. But I do think that it, now that I think a little bit more about that, Alexis, I do think you might see a little bit more urgency, particularly toward the end of the year, particularly in the playoffs and the section playoffs. But that, I don't know, that's hard to say, because I thought the football teams that I've watched here the last few weeks, it looks like full-on football to me.
Yeah.
They're still, because I think that, and part of the reason for that is the bigger lesson here is to really subscribe to the old adage that, play every minute like it's your last. I think that really come through for these kids this fall. So we'll see who it keeps around, and we'll see if it does give any little jolt to those that do stick around. But hey, at least we could I just hope we can get to it when it's safe to do so and as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
There was like a bridge league formed, right, for the high school athletes to kind of continue playing. How do you think it affects some of them now that there's this pause? Because like you mentioned, they were gearing up, getting ready to start high school hockey next week. How does this particularly affect the hockey side of things? I mean, it's not necessarily a pause in the middle of the season. It's kind of nice that it's happening before they're officially going. But for some of those players, it was like, oh, we're here and now we're stopping again.
Yeah, I would have loved to have had my co-author for the book, Lauren Nelson, who couldn't join us today. He's basically owning everything to do with Bridge League coverage, and I wish he could answer that. I can only speculate that. I'm sure it's hard because you think you have something, you're told that you're going to wait for your season, but hey, we've got this plan B, and then all of a sudden they take the plan B away. That's got to be tough. It's got to be, but kids are resilient. I just wish they weren't being tested so much.
That's fair. And your own daughter, right? You had mentioned that it's affected her a little bit in the way of sports, like it has most parents. Tell us a little bit about your own personal at-home experience with her and how this has taken its effect on you guys.
Yeah, I got a 13-year-old who enjoys soccer and basketball and golf. And what we learned back in the spring is Zoom meetings don't work for soccer teams. It's just not an easy way to watch what's happening with hey, look at what this drill should look like. It's not easy to do, but at least it was something. She enjoyed being back when she could play this summer, and we were looking forward to a pretty strong basketball season. But she knows that that all of this that's being done, whether you agree with it or not, it's all being done in the name of safety. And it's hard to argue with that, and it's hard to be too bitter about that, when it's all said and done.
Well, I know that we kind of touched on this in the first segment of the show today, but it was a little bit easier to pull off those outdoor sports because they were outdoors. So doing soccer, doing football, a little bit more feasible, even volleyball, because there's less, players on a squad and on the court at one time. It was a little bit easier to pull those off. Now you're moving into basketball, which is a very intimate sport on a small court. You're moving into hockey, which is, players are right up against each other. Do you think that once this restriction is lifted and sports can happen again, do you think there's just going to be additional struggles in general trying to pull off these seasons, knowing that these are indoor seasons and we might have some extra issues we didn't see with the outdoor sports?
Yeah, you should always be prepared for changes, for reductions, for further restrictions. When we went into the football postseason, 20% of the teams around the state had to bow out because of COVID-19 related issues. And that doesn't even mean you have a positive case on your team necessarily. It means you have the right to suspect that you might, and you go through those protocols, and that could knock you out of being able to play in a particular game. It's going to continue to be a challenge, and people are going to continue to need to be patient, and they're going to need to adjust their expectations. I don't think that we're going to have 18,000 people at the X in March, but if we could have some semblance of a state tournament, that would be good. So I think people just have to have measured expectations as we get into this, because it won't just be like flipping a switch. Okay, we're back. There's going to be some compromise and some disappointment to come yet.
It's crazy to me to think that was probably the last big event I attended of this year was the state high school tournament. And
even then things were kind of ramping up. And do you remember we were kind of like, should we be here?
It felt a little odd. Like, okay, we've heard that this is something to keep an eye on, but I wasn't going to miss Matamidi going for that Class A championship. I was there with my letter jacket loud and proud. So
we from a self perspective with book sales, we were fortunate because, like you said, the tournament ended on a Saturday, and in Matamidi, I was finally playing in a meaningful game on a Saturday. Anyway,
yes.
But I just lost the Matamidi sales. But then the next Friday we were done. Yeah, we went to bed Thursday night, on March 12th, thinking that we were going to watch the next day's girls basketball state tournament with limited crowds, and we woke up Friday expecting that, and then by 10 a.m. or so, they pulled the plug, and that was it. And that was it's the same calendar year, but it may as well be another decade ago.
No kidding. You had mentioned your book, Tourney Time, in the hope that, tournament returns possibly for this year. But tell us, where did the idea come from? I mean, it's kind of crazy to think like it's taken this long for a great coffee table book to come out about Minnesota high school hockey. We all know and love it here. Tell us about the process.
Yeah, well, you just kind of nailed it right there, Jesse. This book didn't exist in this format. The Let's Play Hockey people did a book back around 2000. That was a really nice collection of statistics and rosters and box scores. What it really lacked for color and stories and characters, and that was a need that needed to be filled. And I really enjoy, if you're familiar with the NFL Network's America's Game series, they take an hour and then they go deep on a particular Super Bowl champion from a given year. And I'm glued to those things when they come on. And I just thought, I want to do a book like that. And we've got this was 2016, I guess, is when we started thinking about it. And the 75th tournament wasn't far away. And I knew that with Lauren Nelson, who I'd been covering the state tournament with at that point for a few seasons, I knew he was a rock solid reporter, great work ethic. He had actually done back in 2011 the top 100 Minnesota high school hockey players, which he researched and wrote. And I thought it's a great series of things that he did. And I thought that's the kind of guy I want involved in this. And so I told him what I was thinking, and I think it took him 4 seconds to say he was. and fortunately, the pitch to the Minnesota Historical Society Press as a publisher, that pitch didn't take much. And I think the reason that they signed on so quickly, they recognize the historical value of this information and of these stories. And it also speaks to the power of the tournament. People, this is one of the things we do well and have been doing well for years. And it's a great tradition. And to give it a lot of love and care and put a lot of work into it, people responded to that and really got behind the concept.
Well, I think it's super cool that Minnesota high school hockey has enough good content to even fill a book. I mean, that's pretty amazing that you can write a whole book about just one area of hockey.
And it's not Minnesota. A small book. It's a large, heavy book too, right?
Yeah, we went for it. Let me see here. I can tell you the number of pages.
What do we got?
Oh, let's see. I'm in the 275 pages.
So 275 pages. Full of stories. When you were writing this book, did anything stick out that maybe you had kind of forgot about, and then when you were writing about it, you're like, oh, that was really exciting, I forgot about that, or anything that you were just super thrilled to put into the book right off the bat?
There were 2 chapters that come to mind. The very first one in 1945, and then the 1996 chapter from more the modern era. And the 45 chapter got my attention because, we sold this as we were going to interview anywhere from 4 to 6 or whatever the number felt like it needed to be, people for each chapter. And I got really nervous about the 1945 chapter because I wasn't sure, A, who was alive that played in it. And then B, there was a man named Gene Aldrich who is generally credited as the point person for making the tournament as we know it happen. And of course he died in, I think it was 1959. And so I was like, wondering, does he have a next of kin that I can find? and so that the fact that we were able to pull that chapter off, because we did find his only child, a gentleman by the name of John, who, as luck would have it, took a great interest in his father's life and times and putting together his own kind of remembrances and things. And he had a great story about his dad walking home. Gene was the activities director for the city of St. Paul back in the 30s and in the early 40s. And John told a story about his dad walking home from work one night, and it was on the Armistice Day blizzard, which was a deadly storm. It killed, I think 24 people or more in the Twin Cities. And his dad walked home. It took him 6 hours to get from downtown St. Paul to their neighborhood over by Creekendale Mall High School. And I just thought, and the history of the tournament, there was a high school league approved tournament that happened in 1941 or 42 that never came back. And then before that, there was a state tournament that was supposed to happen in the St. Peter area down by Gustavus Adolphus that didn't happen because the weather, it was a mild winter and they couldn't get outdoor ice. So there had been, they've been trying to put together a tournament, but the one that stuck was Gene's. And so I really wanted that first chapter to really get to know him a little bit, because the only thing I really knew about him is that Aldrich Arena was named after him.
Right.
That was it. So we were able to find not only information about him, but a great story about his persistence, and the same persistence that he used to create the tournament and keep it going is the one he used to walk home on the day of the Armistice Day Blizzard. And then if you fast forward to 1996, of course, that was the great semifinal between Apple Valley and Duluth East. Went 5 overtimes, ended at 1:39 in the morning. I had done a 20-year remembrance of that game in the Star Tribune in 2016, and so I was a little concerned, like, well, what can I add to that wasn't in that story? And a friend of mine in officiating, I was telling him about it, and he said, oh yeah, you should talk to Rick Larson, because when us officials get together and have a couple of pops, he likes to tell the story about when he was on the crew that night, and he got his wife had turned the game off after the first period. She was watching on TV. He comes in about 2:30 in the morning. His wife says, I told you not to go to the bar after the game. So that became the beginning to that story. And I thought,
you imagine probably a lot of dads and other people had maybe the same type of thing, right?
Yeah,
like, oh, were you at the bar? Like, no, I was at the hockey game.
Exactly. So when you can start a story with a bang, the old expression, they aren't going to see the circus if you can't get them in the tent. Those were great stories to set this up. And really that's what the book is about. It's about great stories. It's not about if a guy scored on the forehand or the backhand. It's what are the stories? What's the color? Who are these? There's a lot of characters, and the hockey people are generally great people to talk to. And Lauren and I combined to do more than 400 interviews, and
wow.
We would have loved to have done more. We talked about the length of the book. I would have loved it if it could go on longer, because there's a lot of great stuff that we couldn't get in.
Did you have people transcribing for you, or did you have to go through all 400 of those? Oh my goodness, sir. Anybody who knows me, like, I hate transcribing even like a half-hour interview. I can't. Every journalist has that gripe, right?
But to save myself, you know how many interviews I recorded? That was it, 2. I didn't want to deal with transcribing. I just wanted to write it, take the notes, and so I tried to save myself, because otherwise transcribing that would have been a nightmare.
It would have been crazy. You had mentioned in the Aldrich story, for instance, finding a next of kin and tracking some folks down. What were some challenges that putting this together had? Because there's so much history there, right, to sort through. And like you said, you wish you could make it a giant book, but you do have to kind of pick and choose. What were some of the other challenges that you guys maybe ran into?
There were a few chapters where we didn't feel we had a starting point as far as, okay, who is somebody on this team that we can get to? 1952 Hibbing was like that for me. I had nothing. And I had talked to people who were from Hibbing, the Michelettis, as a matter of fact. And I said, do you guys have anybody? They didn't. So I'm going, oh man, how's this going to work? But we ended up finding somebody. And then what you saw, that individual, Herb Sellers is the name. He was a player on the 1952 team who unfortunately died before the book came out, rest in peace. But he actually went and found numbers of old teammates that he didn't have at the time, because, again, he believed in what we were doing, and he wanted to make it as good as it could be. So he got a hold of teammates that I'd heard were dead, and they're alive, and one of them's living. And, I left Minnesota in 54 and never came back. But Herb was able to track a guy like that down. So once you got a hold of a couple of people, it generally went really well. They were great about giving you numbers and other information you might need. And I think that there was probably 2 calls that I put out that didn't get returned to me. And in the defense of one of them, I don't know if I had the right number. But that just goes to show people really believed in what we were doing and how we were doing it, and they wanted to be a part of it.
Well, and you're telling the story, like you mentioned, this isn't a book about the game recaps, right? I mean, you're really diving in, and I think you can speak to this. That's the best part about being a writer in general, whether it's writing a story in the paper. I mean, to be able to tell the story, you're making it come to life. I mean, that's just got to be such a great feeling.
It is, and certainly from the earlier days, because journalists didn't talk to people as much, and certainly not players. But even in the modern era, I mean, we breeze through those tournaments sometimes, and it's hard to to get as much depth as you want, because they're in the moment and it's kind of a blur to those kids. And you're trying to fill all the different responsibilities that you have. So it was really interesting in talking to players of in the recent years that have had a few years to step back from it and had the gift of perspective, and to hear what they're having to say now versus, they may have been marginal quotes at the podium, but now 4 or 5 years later, they're young men. They've seen a little bit of the world. They have a better sense of what this meant in their lives, and they have much more to share. And it's really gratifying to hear what they have to say.
Now, I find it interesting that a couple of your favorite parts of the book are some of the, older tournaments and stuff like that. Is there any tournaments that stick out as far as ones that since you've been covering them, that are one of your favorites? It could be just one game or a whole tournament at all.
Well, I was at that 96 game as a fan, and I did leave early. I was with a girlfriend at the time who lived near Harding High School, which is not far from the old Civic Center. And we drove back to her house and thought, well, maybe the news will have be on late and catch a score. And nope, there it was live. So that sticks out and will always stick out. But as I got into this book, I was really excited from a more modern era. I really wanted to get to know Lakeville North 2015 better, because I felt like that was a really remarkable team of this modern era, and I really wanted to know more about what made them tick. And I know from dealing with Trent Eigner over the years, he's a pretty deep cerebral guy, and I really wanted to hear what he thought these years later, the Paling twins and all these guys, and they did not disappoint. That chapter turned out to really go well, and it was again, I use the word gratifying a lot in our conversation, but everyone was so interested and excited about talking and telling me what we thought and the greater purpose of it all, the greater meaning of it all. So yeah, that was 2015 was one I was very interested to do.
You mentioned the Apple Valley game a couple times. I remember speaking with Eric Westrom a few times, and he still talks about that game like it happened yesterday sometimes. And he mentions how he gets together with his teammates. I mean, there's something, we all know it. We talk about it every March, right? How special and wonderful the high school tournament is. But your book really, again, exemplifies that, right? Like, this is why it's special. Again, it's those little stories. It's the team bonding. It's the communities coming together. Does it ever kind of, when you step back, are you filled with just a lot of pride about Minnesota and Minnesota hockey in general after accomplishing a book like this?
Most definitely. You have to be a fan and you have to have passion for this to put in the work that Lauren and I did. And it really was something that we thoroughly enjoyed. And, you talked, Jesse, about the passion, the pride. When people ask what's the same between 1945 and 2019, that's what it is. It's that's thread is never left. Wherever you came from and whoever you played for, you understood what it meant to get out there and do your thing for your school and your community and your teammates, and that's never left. And part of the storytelling is visual too. And we had our secret weapon was a fellow by the name of Kyle Owen. He works with VintageMinnesotaHockey.com. If you spend time on there, it's a treasure trove of old information, and he also sells some pretty cool apparel too. But he was our photo guy. Yeah, I'm not. We spent a lot of time on. You talked about transcribing being the devil. He's going through boxes upon boxes of mostly organized, but not as well as it should be, negatives. And then he would bring in a light table, and he would bring in his own camera, and he would take photos of the negatives, and he would then bring those out on the computer screens. He did this for, I don't know, probably close to 10,000 images.
Wow.
So as much as the writers, we like our pretty words and our stories, photography grabs people, and Kyle Owen brought that photography to life particularly from about 1945 to about 1988, which was kind of the bulk of what the History Center had in their archives. He was the guy that went through all that, and he was just an indispensable member of the team. So that the photos are great too. If you have the time to flip through and check them out, whether it's the equipment or the facilities, it's wonderful to see the evolution.
Well, tell people where they can find your book. Christmas is coming up soon. It's not going to be too far away. I know I'm making it a goal this year to shop local, support people I know who are selling something. I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same way with everything going on this year to help people out like that. So where can people find your book? Because like we said, if you're a Minnesota hockey fan, you love the tournament. So might as well
You
go
need
get the book.
this. You need this book for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Of course, you can do Amazon and the Minnesota Historical Society Press. But I'll put a plug in for our website. It's very simply legacy.hockey. Lauren Nelson created the site, and it's the only place where you can order the book, it'll be signed by both of us authors, and we have a form in there on legacy.hockey where you can ask for any kind of personalization you want. And we've seen all kinds of personalization requests, and we're happy to fill them because, it makes a great gift for the hockey fan, the sports fan. And legacy.hockey is the best place to be able to make that gift as special as possible.
Perfect. Well, you guys be sure to go check it out. Like I said, holidays are right around the corner. Perfect timing. It's not like we planned that or anything, right, David? Not at all. We had no idea.
Total coincidence, Jesse.
Total coincidence. Absolutely. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us. Bummer Lauren couldn't make it, but obviously very understandable. Work always comes first. Got to make that money. So hopefully we can catch up with two of you down the road when hockey returns, maybe at the state tournament.
When the tournament returns,
crossed. Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So.
On his behalf, I want to thank you. We were very excited to be on this particular podcast. We know the passion that you bring to your content, and it's a real pleasure to be a part of that. Thank you.
Well,
we appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate that. We're going to take another quick break, you guys. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, this is producer Fred. I just wanted to make sure everyone is out there subscribing, liking, sharing, rating. Anything you can to help grow the Beauts would be amazing. I want you to tell your hockey coach. I want you to tell your grandma. I want to tell your friends, everybody. And by the way, check out our merch. Buy our merch. Bye.
We're back. Thanks again to David for talking about his book and high school sports, even though wonk, 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 we're kind of in the funk. But if you could put a collection of stories together from your tourney time, any come to mind?
From my tourney time?
Yeah, like going to the games. Or
I was going to say, as a player, because I didn't play. No, as a fan. I just think that, like every year there's something fun. When I was in high school, I think only 1 year did my school make it when I was in high school. So it was I just love like missing school, taking the bus to going to the game. Everyone's like excited to be out of school. And South St. Paul, where I went to high school, they notoriously have had a pretty good girls team. So our girls team was always good. The boys team, not so much. But yeah. And now that I'm older and like calling high school games and stuff, like as a career, like last year was so fun being at the tournament and calling games for K-Fan. Like that was just so exciting. And there was some really, really fun games and some upsets in that tournament. So every year there's something fun to look out for. Yeah. What was the double overtime Hermantown game from a couple years ago where they like called off a goal and then they like scored again? I don't remember the exact, I don't even remember who they were playing. I listened to it on the radio, but that game is still like one of my favorite games from the tournament. So yeah, lots of fun stories and fun to have it compiled into a book. And so people should definitely go check that out if you're a fan of the tourney, which if you're Minnesotan, you likely are. So
perfect coffee table book for the hockey lovers in your life. Don't forget it. Again, the same thing, like just literally getting out of school. Matamidi, when I was in school, was not good. Unlike they are now. Again, Class A champs.
But they decided to be good right as Jesse and I like to get into it about our schools.
But it was always fun. I'd get out of school and go with my friends. A lot of my friends went to White Bear, and White Bear was really good in my high school days. So we'd go watch them. So I love it. If you love high school hockey, which I know you do, be sure to pick up that book. So thanks again to David for sharing his insights. We're going to put a wrap on things. We do have questions, but we're actually trying something new. We're going to have an exclusive answering on our YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe, check out our YouTube channel for answers to all of your questions. We're going to do that every week. So you'll have a little bit more time to get those questions into us. And you'll be able to check them out on our YouTube with some hot takes and the answers there.
It's going to be fun.
Before we let you go, it's time for everybody's segment where Alexis dives back into her youth hockey diary and to throw some chirps, maybe some love, and to recapture what it was like being a young Alexis watching hockey. Here's Dear Diary with Alexis.
This one is simply titled Wild versus Flames.
Always the Flames.
Always the Flames. 10 reasons why you should hate the Flames. Number 9, they're all ugly.
Oof.
That's
And
it.
that's Dear Diary with Alexis.
Why was I so
Wow.
mean? Like,
Wow.
geez.
Judgy,
Went straight for the looks. I could have just said they're terrible at hockey, but no, I just came straight.
They're probably
for their
really good
looks.
people, but
I'm
no,
s-
you just
yeah,
judged a book by its
jeez.
cover.
God.
That'll do it for episode 49. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Have a great Thanksgiving. We'll have some social media stuff out there, but enjoy your Thanksgiving this week. Again, we're all in this together. Stay strong. We'll be back next week. Have a good one.